Welcome to Syntax. Today we have a potluck question for you. This is where we bring the answers, you bring the questions. Please keep submitting your questions. Go to syntax.fm. In the nav, there's a button that says potluck queues. Click on that. You can submit your own question. Ask us whatever. Soft skills, hard skills, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, love, life, anything goes, and we'll answer it on a future episode. My name is Wes. I'm a developer from Canada. With me, as always, is Scott. How you doing, Scott?
Doing super good, man. Yeah, not too much. I just spoke at DenverScript last night, so that was a lot of fun. A lot of people came out.
Oh, yeah.
It was just super cool. Yeah. So
did you bring some of the skate decks I saw?
Yeah, we did a little
fingerboards.
We did a little giveaway, which was actually fun in itself because I was just thinking, all right, we'll just, write people's names down on the list and draw them out of a hat. And CJ was like, no, man, we can do this a different way. And we had everybody's name from RSVPing on meetup.com. So what I did is I wrote a script to pull everyone's name from the meetup RSVPs and put them into an array. And then CJ wrote a script that would randomly pick people. But what was so fun about it was that he the first time he put like a delay. And so it would count each, or it would announce each winner like one letter at a time. But the delay he put on there was like crazy long. So we hit go and it's just like A, B, and everyone's just like, so the next thing you know, CJ is writing a script live and it's on the screen and he's adjusting it to just output them and do it in a more fun way. So it ended up being like, that part ended up being a fun thing in its own, but we gave away 10 of them, a lot of Syntax fans in the house. So it was super cool getting to meet everybody there. So just a lot of fun.
We should say, if anyone wants to get a Syntax fingerboard, go to syntax.fm, click on the swag button in the nav, and we'll send you. These are $10. We also got 2 new hats. Do I have my hat? I got one of my hats right now. I got the wool cap just in time for, can't wear it with my headphones on right now, but just in time for winter. And then we also have a lighter one, which is blue with the Syntax logo on it. So amazing. Check them out. They won't last forever. This fingerboards are selling way faster than I thought, which is hilarious that's what people want instead of a hat.
Yeah, it is fun. I do love the fingerboard, and I was actually pretty impressed with your fingerboard skills on your.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I was surprised.
A little editing magic in there, but I've been practicing, especially like when I'm on a call or whatever. I'll just mute myself and just like start flipping around and all here around. I'm getting pretty good.
Yeah, my parents sent out a half pipe from my childhood, and my son has been playing with his deck on it, and so I was doing some dropping in and just, yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, and if you want to drop into solving some of your errors and bugs, well, it's a good place to do that if you have them all being logged into Sentry, because guess what? You can find them super easily. And one thing I actually just added yesterday to our Sentry, which has existed for a little bit, but I hadn't noticed it. Sentry's always coming up with new tools, was the cache. You can see cache hits versus misses inside of Sentry. So I just added that. It's going to be really fun to be able to make sure that we're caching effectively. There's a lot of conversation going on developer Twitter about caching these days. So if you would like to see your cache hits or misses, you want to check your performance, head on over to sentry.io, sign up and get 2 months for free. All right, let's get into it.
All right. First question from Chuck. Hey, Scott and Wes. How would you recommend moving a project off Create React app? What tools or frameworks are out there that you'd recommend in the React ecosystem? No svelte. Sorry, Scott. There is no interest in using server components such that is with Next.js. Thank you. And the rest of the Syntax team, excellent work. Oh, okay, so this is a great question. So for a long time, the recommended way to start a React app was with Create React App. And then what that did is it spun up a whole bunch of tooling. I believe it had Webpack and Babel and a few more things that would allow you to both use a dev server and bundle your application for development. It was client side only. There was nothing in it aside from React. So there's no router or any server side, no APIs, no server components, none of that, right? It's just simply client side rendered, and then you have to do the rest. So if you are moving from Create React App, it's very clear what you should move to. If you don't want a framework, it's Vite. The move to that should be very simple. The way that Vite works is that you have a input, which is an HTML file, and then that HTML file, it'll have like a div that you want to mount your application on. And then it will also have a link to your script, which is your entry point. Usually it's like app.js or something like that. And what that does is it renders out your first app. So likely you already have a router, right? You're probably using React Router or Tanstack Router or something like that. So you don't need any of that. And the move to that should be very, very simple. There might be a couple things where you had like some custom Webpack config for loading specific types of images or CSS or whatever, but Vite handles almost all of those things out of the box for you. So you're likely don't even need a Vite config. And if you do, it's not that big of a deal to move on over.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that is one of those things that, the cool thing about Create React App is that you didn't have to worry about any of that SSR stuff, or it was just a nice, starter, especially for CSR-based apps. So yeah, I would personally move that way as well, especially because Vite is just such a great build tool to work in. I know that it's such a great platform overall, and I think maybe a bit underrated by React developers, especially those of you who have only used things like Webpack, maybe don't understand just how fast and easy and good it is. There's so many just niceties that come out of the box in Vite that I can't live without. Yeah. I know. I love one of my favorite things, Wes, is like being able to import a raw text from a file. Yeah. Which doesn't seem like it's that handy, but like you can just append a question mark raw to the end of an import string, and it gives you that file as a text file. And man, I gotta love that. I use that all the time.
We actually have a proposal in TC39 called import attributes, and it's actually not even a proposal. It's already implemented. But the only implementation so far is JSON, where you can import a file as JSON, and soon there will be the ability to import as text as well, which is it's going to be great because sometimes you just need the raw text out of that file.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just needing that just yesterday. I was building a little code viewer where you have like an iframe and the rendered site inside of an iframe and the code next to it. And yeah, I'm getting the code already, but I wanted to pass in an arbitrary CSS string from another file and append it to my thing to do the source of the iframe, right? Because you can have just a string as the source of an iframe instead of a URL. And so like
a data 64.
Not even. No, just straight up.
Explain that.
String.
I don't know if I know that.
Okay, let me pull up my code here so that way I don't misrepresent anything. But yeah, I wanted to build like a little side by side code and whatever, like a demo. There's a attribute on iframe called sourceDoc, SRCDOC, and that takes just a string, and that string can be HTML, right? But so I wanted some additional CSS applied to that from CSS I'm bringing in elsewhere. So I just imported that CSS as a raw string and did a string append and threw that into the source doc. Yeah.
Yeah. If the iframe is on the same origin, meaning like the same domain name, you can actually reach into an iframe and modify the document of the iframe from the parent, which is pretty nifty.
This isn't even doing that. I mean, there's no URL associated. Straight up string for the whole DOM.
It's just nothing. Yeah,
but for sure.
I guess a blank iframe still has a document though, so you're reaching into the blank document and
embedding.
And
you're just inserting. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
for sure. Cool. So the next one is from Zeonides. What is the best way to get along with a Q&A team, even if you have to pretend and create a shape of a smile on your face? Not even smile, but create the shape of a smile on your face. Yeah, how do you get along with Q&A? What is specifically Q&A?
QA,
yeah. What is that?
This is Q&A.
Quality assurance. For some reason, I know what QA does, but I never thought to think about what the acronym.
Never put it together, yeah.
Yeah, never put it together. Quality assurance. They're the folks that are making sure that things that are going out as a product to your users works well, right? that it has quality. It's the people who are checking to make sure the seams are okay, right? And when you're saying you want to get along with them, I think the thing to think about here is that you have a common goal with the QA team. The common goal is to ship good code. It's to ship a good product. And the QA team is there to help find those things. And whether or not they come back to you with, now you have a big, long to-do list of stuff to do. I mean, that stuff you kind of had to do anyways, whether or not you knew it or not. Sometimes things just slip through the cracks. So it's not that you missed or you're a bad developer for missing those things or whatever. But
Yeah.
you want to ship something good. It reflects on you at the end of the day. So the way you should think about this is the QA team is there to kind of save your butt, because if those things go out to users and your Sentry is finding all these bugs because you shipped a whole bunch of buggy, iffy software, and now users are complaining, man, that reflects poorly on you, right? They're there to make sure that you look good for your boss because you crushed it. So I think the best thing to do to get along with your QA team is to know that you guys are on the same team and they're there to help you. That's the way I look at it, at least.
I have a different approach. Write a script and replace them. How many people still are using QA teams? I'm curious. It's like many years ago, I worked for this company. I did a lot of contracting, and every single time we had a big push, it would go through QA, and they would click everything and test it and find all the little bugs here and there. And a lot of that stuff, not all of it, especially a lot of the like accessibility audit stuff, but a lot of that can be found by integration tests and unit tests and doing like a diff on like screenshots when you deploy the thing. So that is there. I think also what I've heard from people, and this is a bit silly, but they sometimes just put a couple like decoys in there, because I think what happens is that the QA team has to find something. Otherwise, they're not doing their job, right? So if you throw them a couple bones in there, this is probably a bad answer, but maybe put a couple decoy bugs in there to make the QA people happy. Sometimes this is just internal politics that needs to be done. And if you don't have a lot of stuff, then they start nitpicking things that don't necessarily matter, and then it's a whole bunch of work. Just fix the nits.
Who cares? Who cares? Yeah.
Write a script. Get them fired.
No, Wes, I just did some quick Googling.
I'm mostly joking, everybody.
Yeah.
But
I did a quick Google, and man, QA, there's jobs out there. There are job openings for QA left and right. And I did see, who knows how real this is, but it says that QA is only more in demand than it was in the past. So I don't think this is something that's going away. I don't think this is something that is decreasing in popularity. I think it's something that's probably increasing in popularity. Yeah,
Tweet us
we are
at
all shipping
Syntax FM.
software.
I'm curious what if you have QA in your workplace and what that looks like as part of the deployment process.
Yeah, I think it will. I think it's just like any industry in this space is continuing to evolve. But I do think, I think there's a very real reality where you just have a common goal, you fix your bugs, and they're on your side.
Exactly. Next question from Stobe Racing. What are the benefits of learning React with Next.js framework compared to using previous approaches? So kind of like what we just talked about, using just straight up Vite or Create React app. I'm currently learning React and starting a new project. I see the latest updates have made Next.js a prominent option as a framework. I find many advantages in Next.js, and I like the built-in API functionality that really stands out. Could you elaborate on how this framework enhances development workflows, particularly with new features compared to other methods? So I'll answer this like half Next.js, but also just half like, what's the benefit of using a framework versus nothing at all, like going straight Vite and doing it all yourself. So like the pros are like, it's much faster to get up and running. It has baked in routing, often has baked in environmental variable support. It will have like server-side API stuff. It will have like so much stuff that you need on every single app that you're building. And also there's just like lots of existing solutions. Often you'll search for something and there'll be like for example, with SvelteKit, I needed Cloudflare CAPTCHA, which is called Turnstile. And I started implementing it myself. And I was like, I wonder if somebody's built a SvelteKit component for this. And of course there was. There was a really nice component for it. So I just plugged that thing in myself, and I was up and running in no time because somebody had written the code for it. The cons to that is there can be some confusion over what is React and what is Next.js. I think that's not a huge issue, but just know what is React and what is Next.js, like where that line is. There's often confusion over best practices and versus opinions. Like a lot of the stuff in Next.js is very opinionated, which is people often want that. I just want a very opinionated approach to do something, especially with like the image component in Next.js. If you use an image tag in Next.js, it will immediately flag it red and be like, what are you doing using an image tag? Use this thing where you have to give it a height and a width immediately, which I get. The reason why they say you want a height and a width is so that you don't have the layout recalculate when that image loads. But also, I don't know the width and height. Like, you tell me. Aren't you like sourcing the image? It would be nice if you could tell me that.
Yeah.
And then like documentation plugins. So Next.js for many years was running on this thing called the Pages router. And they had different approaches to getting server-side data and then providing that to the component at a page level. And then the new way to do it is called the app router. And they've done a fantastic job at, if you find docs for the wrong one, you can always switch to what you're using. But sometimes plugins aren't updated for the app router. Or sometimes you're reading a blog post that's not updated. It's just like, it's a little bit much to figure out, okay, what's that? And especially if you're brand new to it, what the hell? Pages router, app router? I don't know. I'm using Pages, but I'm building an app. So I think with any new project, I would absolutely recommend grabbing a framework because it's just so much easier to get up and running. You can just build so much faster, and there's a lot more sort of plugins and stuff at your disposal. So I would say, grab the framework and run with it.
Yeah, I agree. And like you mentioned, I mean, there's enough things that are like very Next.js specific. When I go on Next.js, I have the opposite experience since I am more familiar with plain React than Next.js. I'm like struggling to do things because I'm like, I got to figure out the Next.js way to do things now. So if you're going to be using the framework, which, makes sense to do, use the framework and learn those things. Next one from Horatio von Schlappenmeister. Okay, I don't think this is his real name given the context of the question, which is, I just checked out your about page on syntax.fm, and those are all obviously implausible aliases. What are your real names? And what Horatio is referring to is everybody on this team, except for me, has a kind of a crazy, like almost too good last name. We got West Boss. Okay, West Boss. A 6-letter total. Boss as a last name. Just, that's got to be fake. Caitlin Bloom. Okay, that's a cool last name.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
Ben Vinegar.
That's like the most like, that Sunny Philadelphia, Vic Vinegar. Every time I see that, I think about it like, what a badass.
So and then Randy Rector. We got Rector, Bloom, Vinegar, Boss. And then Reynolds and Talinsky. I have the least likely of a fake name, which is funny that these are all our real names. We just somehow got the collection of the coolest people with the coolest last names. And I probably should have done a fake last name to fit in with all y'all cool last names, but no, I'll take Talinsky. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that you see a lot with people like joining the internet now is you just go by like a handle or you just come up with like a fake last name. Because it's so much easier to reference them when you know what their handle is.
Totally. Yeah, it is. And that's good for a few reasons. It's these are all our last names. So now you're going to have to deal with it. We just got cool last names here. All right, next question from Jer Bear. Just curious about what your workday typically looks like. Thoughts on things like RTO policies, which is return to office. Where do you get your best work done? How do you handle office relationships if the entire team is remote from you? Stuff like that. Sorry if my question is too vague. It's not too vague. I think that it covers a lot. Yeah, RTO, return to office, is kind of a touchy subject. As somebody who does work from home and has worked for myself, so therefore my office has been my home for, 10 years plus now. It's easy for me to say. I kind of romanticize working in an office a little bit, which is crazy
Oh,
to
man.
think. I know. I think it's crazy to say that. I like working from home personally because of if my kids need me, I can be at school, quickly or any of that stuff. But when I worked in an office, I did get a lot of value out of that collaboration with peers in person, having somebody look at your screen and, talking through issues and stuff like that. Now, granted, I was a more junior of a developer many of those times, but I think a lot of the mentorship I got in my career came from the moments where you're going for a walk at lunch, you're
Yeah.
hanging out with your buddy in your office, you're just chit-chatting over coffee in the morning or something like that. I got so much value out of that stuff that I kind of romanticize that a little bit and look back at it so fondly. But at the same time, I totally understand working from home has been so much easier. So the conversation is a little touchy on all sides. I don't necessarily know what the best answer is. I do think it's a little funny how the people who are loudly proclaiming that return to office is the greatest thing ever are mostly owners and bosses,
Yeah.
and the employees are like, no, wait a second, that's not as good for me. But typical workday for me is, I drop my kids off at school and then I come home. I tend to, first things first, I tend to do a couple things early on. I get to inbox 0 every day. Inbox 0 is important for me because it makes sure that I'm on top of what I'm doing. It doesn't necessarily mean that I've taken care of every email, but it means that I've at least read and either snoozed that email to a time in which I'm going to be able to, take care of it. So if I get an email and it's an ask of me, I'll say, I can't do this until noon. Snooze it until noon, and that gets it out of my inbox, and it'll pop back in at noon. I use Superhuman as an email client, but a lot of email clients do snoozing, so this is something that is very common. So the first thing I do is get my inbox to 0. The second thing I do is write my to-do list. I use tweak.so. tweek.so. It's a simple to-do list app. I write my to-do list. I move things around if I'm not going to be able to accomplish them, and I take stock of what I'm going to be doing that day realistically. Because without that to-do list, once I'm actually in a position to do things, I need to be able to look and say all right, what should I pick up at this very second? Otherwise, what am I going to do? I'm going to go on Twitter. I'm going to go on Reddit. I'm going to just bop around with some code without out direction, right? And then typically I'm either recording like we're doing today, or I do for YouTube Shorts, whatever, or I'm writing code for the Syntax website, for demos. I'm trying things. I'm trying to break things. A lot of times that's kind of where we're at. Since Wes and I are kind of working on the edges here, a lot of the times the code we're working on is either just a lot of exploration, a lot of breaking things, a lot of just figuring things out, and exploring is really it. So, if I'm not in meetings, answering emails, or, recording, I'm coding. And whether or not it's for a big project or explorations is different by the day.
Yeah. For me, it's pretty similar on every day. I wake up, take the kids to school, and then usually when I'm driving home from dropping the kids off, I will. One feature I really like about Apple CarPlay is that it shows you your calendar for the day. So as I'm driving, I can tap my calendar and see what I've got coming up that day. And usually hopefully it's nothing. So I can just work on stuff. Sometimes it's meetings or whatnot, or on Tuesdays, we record pretty much the entire day. And then I choose as I'm driving home, what I'm going to do. Today I'm driving home, and at the end of the day yesterday, I was working on the layout for the potluck question submission. And I had a really good use case for CSS subgrid. And I was like, oh, tomorrow morning, bam, I'm going to record that video. I know exactly what I want. So as I'm driving, I'm sort of thinking about how I can frame the video and how I can describe it. And then I just sit down and bam, right away, I record that, edit it, put the thing out. Then usually it's just, I have a list of either things that I need to work on, which is stuff for courses, stuff for syntax, or stuff that I want to check out, which is just a running list of different technologies. And usually I'll just sort of look at that and say, what do I need to do and what do I want to do? And sort of balance those things out and grab one of them and sort of just take a deep dive into how it works and how to understand all that good stuff. So that's pretty much it. The office does not appeal to me at all. I definitely see the benefit of the chit chat and the back and forth and the planning and the friendships, and especially like when you have a problem, being able to like noodle through it. Like someone can just roll over and just like talk you through it and noodle on it. That's super powerful. I totally understand that. But also, I just want to be in my soundproof office with my soundproof headphones on, with my screaming music, and just crank it through code.
Yeah, I get that too. Although, sometimes I'm most productive when I'm in public, like at a coffee shop.
Totally. Yeah.
Because then I it's not like I'm being judged for not working, but I feel like it makes me want to feel like I have to work and be productive at a coffee shop. And the same thing happened to me in office, where I felt like if I'm the only one messing around and not doing my job all day long, it's gonna, be obvious that I'm just on Twitter or Reddit or whatever instead of accomplishing anything. And I'm the type of person where I can go down those rabbit holes and like an hour later be like, wait, what was I doing? Where did that time go? I think it's beneficial to me. Not like I need to grind. I don't want to give that impression off that I'm like crazy hustle man or something. But like, my brain just works where I'll get distracted and
the environment of work.
Keep myself on. Yeah,
I find it also the opposite in offices though. If people are like, hey, you want to go grab a coffee, or what are you doing this weekend? Like, no, leave me alone. Yeah. I'm more like I'm trying, and I've gotten more grumpy about that as I have gotten more kids and gotten older. Whereas like my time to work is my time to work, and I don't want to fritter away a second of that doing something that is not enjoyable to me. Obviously I like going for coffee and whatnot. I enjoy that part of it as well, but I feel like sometimes it can be a bit too much of a distraction.
Yeah. You know what I don't miss about the office is like inappropriate office conversations where like I've had people that I've worked with like start talking to me about things that I don't want to be talking to you about at work or in general. And like, what can you do? You can't just be like, go away, please. Like you said it, but it's still like distracting. I remember I was talking to my manager at Ford when I worked there, and I was mentioning that we were checking out Denver, and he's like, I remember the last time I went to Denver, I went to this place, and it was like one of those like racy kind of like Hooters type of restaurants, and I was just like, bro, what do you do? Why are you telling me this? I don't care. I don't want to hear about this. I don't want to be involved in this conversation. Like, I don't miss that stuff at all, because there's just some people who don't have good judgment in that regard. Now, coworkers are going to be overhearing this conversation. I got to act like I'm,
Next question from Pickle Sickle. Not really a question, but a feature request. Would be awesome to have a page on Syntax FM with all the sick pics and their links, where we could see them, perhaps filter by tags, etc. Yes, we have this. Syntax.fm/sick pics has a list of every single sick pic we have ever picked that is sick. And it's actually kind of interesting how we had to generate this, because we're 826 episodes in, and most of them have sick pics, but they've always just been like it's an H2 or an H3 or like a bold that says sick pic. Like it's been in the show notes, but it's never been structured enough. And like taking unstructured data and trying to extract it has always been like a kind of a tricky thing. So I wrote some like pretty funky like DOM traversal regexing type of thing, and it works really well. I don't think there's any sick pic it's ever missed over all the episodes. So it's pretty interesting if you want to look at the code of how do we actually scrape that from the show notes.
Yeah. Well, it's great that they're out there, and if you ever want to see any of that stuff, we did like the first year, maybe we did Syntax, we did like a holiday gift guide of like our favorite sick picks. We should do that again this year. We've done that
a couple of years. Yeah, let us know if you want to see that one again. I've got we stopped it after a couple of years because I was just like picking the same thing over and again, because I just like the same things that I've liked for 5-10 years, but it's been probably 2 or 3 years since we've done it, so maybe we should.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next question from GeekDev. How a junior becomes a senior? Who is a senior? How to learn those stuff? And what kind of projects, books, and communities could help with that? Basically, the difference in roles here between a junior and senior, and how do you get to be a junior or how do you get to be from a junior to a senior dev? Now, a lot of this is just a label. When I got my first senior label role, it was only because my boss had taken a new job and I was the next person in line. That's it. So in that regard, that's how I got the job. That's how I became a senior. And once you get that title, I'll tell you what, the next job is probably not going to be a junior job. So, sometimes you just get that role and that's what you are. But if you want my opinion on like what makes a junior dev different from a senior dev, in my experience and the way I feel about it is that a senior developer has a bigger picture view of everything. Whether that is like business stuff, as in they can see the big picture as how what you're doing applies to the business as a whole. And, you're not just focused on making this button click right? That's a senior developer type of thing. But a senior developer also tends to make decisions around the code base that are smarter for the code base in the company long term than the junior developer who wants to plop in whatever latest and greatest thing that they just learned this weekend. That is definitely a junior trait to be like, let's rip out all this stuff. Now, granted, I'm a ripper outer, I'm a refactorer type of guy, but I'm not doing that in the context of a code base that other folks are having to work in. So it's a little bit different. The senior developer understands a solid, mature code base. They understand how to keep that code base functioning long term. They have a bigger picture view of things is the best way I can describe it.
Beautiful. I don't think I have anything to add to that. It's a really, really well put.
Yeah.
Next one from Diabeta Code. Hey, gents, thanks so much for the podcast. I seriously can't get enough. Firstly, for Scott, do you ever plan on doing any Godot videos or courses? Game dev has been a long time passion of mine, and I always think your courses are extremely well taught. Would love to see some content around it. All right, Scott, let's hear it. What's Godot, and will you make something on it?
Okay, so Godot.
Godot.
Yep. Godot is a open source game dev framework. A lot of these game engines, right, they require license fees, they're expensive to pick up, or they're proprietary, this or that. Godot is open. It's fantastic. It has an incredible community of people working. You can build 3D, 2D, mobile, even published to web games with it. So Godot is really just like the coolest platform, I think, for learning game dev, at least for me personally, mostly because I'm new to game dev and I don't have experience in, Unity or any of these other ones beforehand. I did check out a bunch of these, like Love is I believe, a Lua-based framework that I checked out a lot, but Godot is really cool. I would love, and I've been thinking about this a lot, I've been thinking about doing Godot tutorials. So this question, I put it in here specifically because my son and I are building a game together as an experience so that he can understand not only coding, but like game development, what that entails. He's like, I want to make a video game. I'm like, all right, but we're gonna do this together, and you're going to watch the tutorials with me in a way, and we're going to get the little guy moving on the screen together, and you're going to get to experience those little wins. All right, we wrote this script, and now all of a sudden he can do that. Now I'm not making the kid, my 7-year-old, write code, but I'm having him be there, and he's so excited. He's been the idea man. I said, hey, come up with 8 bosses for this video game, and he drew them all overnight. The next day, he's like, Dad, I got all 8 bosses, and what's so great about this, and now I don't have to come up with those bosses. We went on Chat GPT and did some like, hey, give me some pixel art for these bosses, just so we could visualize what they look like, just so he could get his brain working. The funniest thing about all those bosses, Wes, is that like, man, his little brain is so funny. He's like, Dad, check it out. Here's a boss. It's a shark. He's got like a spike on a chain as a weapon, which is a urchin. It's a sea urchin spike on a chain. I'm like, that's cool. Awesome. And he's like, and he's got 8 heads. I'm like, why has he got 8 heads? Why does he got to have 8 heads? And he's like, all right, here's this next one. He's a salamander that shoots slime balls, and he's got 6 heads. All of his bosses had multiple heads. I was like, every single one of the bosses had some amount of heads. 12 heads, 8 heads, 6 heads. And I was just like, all right, how about one boss has 2 heads, and we can leave it at that. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I would love to do this, especially as like a, Scott and Son makes game together.
Yeah,
Here's what I'm
that would be
learning
a
kind
really
of thing.
cool series. So
Yeah.
is Godot like, is it a GUI for making apps, or is it like a programming language?
It's both. So there's a programming language called GDScript, which I
Okay.
believe is, I'm going to confirm this, is C# based. GDScript is kind of like a more simplified C#, and the language is actually really nice to work in.
Indentation based, similar to Python, high level,
Yeah.
object oriented, imperative, and gradually typed programming language. Wow.
It's actually really nice to work in. And then the GUI itself, you write your code in the GUI, but you can also click around for like adding tiles and collisions, and yeah, it's kind of like a code editor mixed with a GUI for types of things that you can't do with code. But you're programming, let's say, a lot of the things like you would typically do in JavaScript type of thing. When I hit this key, apply this physics by this plus this equals this to make the character move or have the physics apply. So you are writing code for quite a bit of the things, and then other things are entirely GUI based. But yeah, it's a cool platform.
It looks like you can write it in GDScript or C#.net.
Yeah, yes.
Which is pretty neat.
All the tutorials I see are GDScript, and like their docs are really good. And I like GDScript. It's a cool language, and the TypeScript stuff, the types feel like TypeScript in a good way. So yeah, it's comfortable to work in.
Nice. So the second part of this question was for both of you. Obviously, there's 12.5 AI platforms out there. Have either of you tried Find? Seems their as-is option is free and perhaps slightly more dev-centric than the regular ChatGPT, but I could be wrong. Do you have a favorite? Yeah, I've never tried this one. It seems like there are a million of them popping up overnight. It seems like the big ones are all letting you now choose your model, which I thought was really interesting because like 6 months ago, everybody was trying to make their own programming model, and that's still certainly a thing. But now it seems like Cursor allows you to choose your actual model. A lot of people are moving to Claude for this type of thing, which I'd like to say I was very early in on the Claude train when everyone was talking about ChatGPT. Copilot obviously uses OpenAI under the hood, and even Codium uses. You can choose to use OpenAI. The real secret sauce with a lot of these products is not the model behind them now. It's how you provide context, how you do the auto completion. All of what you provide to the model as your prompt is the secret sauce behind it. And we had the Codium guys on and they talked about like that's how they make it so good, because it's not simply just like take this line of code and make it better. It's, I have these tabs open, this thing's in my copy paste. It's referencing these other functions that are in other files, and it's smart about your code base. So I haven't checked it out. Phind, P-H-I-N-D. I need to spend like 7 days trying every single one out there.
I'm going to be honest with you, as you gotten 2 pronunciations wrong in one question.
How do you say this?
It's Find. Yeah, sorry.
Gosh. That's a silly name.
I know it is kind of. I used this I used this before Anthropic Claude was out. And this one did a much better job for me with code issues than ChatGPT did at the time. But after Claude came out, I just started using Claude for everything, and I have not been back to Find at all. So when I did use Find, I found it to be very good, but I have not looked at it in a little while, and maybe I should give this another shot, specifically because it is dev-centric. But, I did find the UI to be nice. I found working with it to be nice, but yeah.
I also Find now allows you to select GPT-4o or Claude Sonnets, Claude Opus. So again, like this is another tool where they are allowing you to use the existing models, and their competitive edge is what they put on top of that.
Yeah, cool. The one that wins for me is the one that can utilize new libraries the best, like Svelte 5, right? That's the one thing I like about Cursor a lot, is I can pass it the Svelte 5 docs so that I can have that context in every query. So yeah, that's always a blocker for me. All right, next question from Bilal. In React, we pass callbacks to a component to take on action updates. that components tell us about. So when a component needs to fire an update, it can fire a callback as a prop. In some other frameworks like Lit or Angular, we listen to an event or output for the same purpose. The difference is that events bubble up, so that prevents callback prop drilling. But is there any other inherent advantage between callbacks and events, or are they just two ways of essentially doing the same thing? Yeah, that's an interesting thing because I've done both of these things, whether that is through custom events or through passing a prop. To me, the difference lies in if I control the component itself, like if it's coming from a component library, I kind of prefer to pass an event up. But if it's coming from a component that I wrote, for some reason, I almost always do it as a prop. No questions about it.
Like an on change equals.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't have any issues with that. For some reason, just because I have control to dive into the component to tweak it at any given point, for me, that feels fine to do that way. I think the prop version is potentially easier, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about advantages. Wes, you have a bunch of stuff here, so I want to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah. It's a kind of an interesting thing because like what he's talking about here is if you have let's say you have a map component and somebody types in an address to that map component and you want to know when, like let's say that event is called map address update. And you want to know when that map address update happens. And in a lot of React components, you would just say on map address update equals, and then you run the function at that point, right? And whereas with like Angular or something like that, that event will fire and it will bubble up, meaning it will go every DOM node higher, and then at a higher level, you can sort of catch that event and say, you can listen for it. So if your state management is happening, or if you need to deal with that event at a higher level and not have to, what he's saying here is prop drilling, which is I have this function that I need to run at a high level. Now I have to pass it 7 levels deep in order to sort of expose it and pass it at this map component. So you can do this in React as well. Mostly people like to do the inline version because it keeps everything sort of together, meaning that your component only knows about itself and it's not hoping that somewhere higher up the chain will sort of deal with that. Now, that's the idea. And also, I agree, that's a pain in the butt because you have to pass them from one to another. So you can use custom events in like custom DOM events, and you can fire them from DOM elements, and for that you would need a ref and a custom hook, and then that custom hook can then be, you can import it, you can put it into context to be able to access it earlier. You can also use an event emitter, which is similar to custom events, but an event emitter is not tied to DOM elements, which might be kind of nice. So you can fire an event a little lower, and then higher up you can listen for that event to fire. And this idea has been around forever, right? We used to call it pub sub. Now we're calling it signals. I think that we will start to see this once the signals make its way into React a little bit more, but lots of state management's external stores already do this for you as well. So if you go and reach for a zoo stand, you can just subscribe to that store. Yeah. And instead of firing an event, you would just listen for that state to be updated, right? Svelte has this as well. You can subscribe to a store if you want to, and you can fire an event when that thing happens. Even React has a hook that's not well known, which is called use sync external store, and that will allow you to sort of detach the two from each other.
Yeah, and it may be that's why I don't think about this that much. I tend to externalize a lot of my state in that kind of way. Yeah. To me, like prop drilling some kind of an event feels like some type of architectural issue or something. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe it's just I haven't hit that issue, but
it's a pain. For me, it's like if you have to pass a event handler like 3 levels deep and it has to weave its way, and then you think, oh, I'll throw it into context, and
I don't think neither of
them are great. It's because in Svelte you could just import the store and listen for it, which is the best. Like everything should be like that.
Yeah, totally. I agree. And that's how I like to work in React as well. And you can work that way in React. Some reason people don't.
Check out ZooStand. It's really good for that. Next one from Dean Forent. I recently started listening to your show during my morning walk. I'm a developer who's been in the industry for 20 years. I recently got laid off from an organization where I had been working for 10 years. I'm in my early 50s and I'm looking for a transition to freelance development as I am nowhere near ready to retire. Even though I gained a ton of experience over the years, all of that experience has been used in products that were proprietary in nature, aside from a public-facing website where I have collaborated with a team of developers on site. I really have no portfolio of work to show. What advice can you give to someone who's just transitioning from a career of working for a single company to a freelance role? Keep up the good work. Yeah, we hear this a lot where like life gets busy. You work for, and also like that was the thing to do for many years. My dad worked for the same company for like his entire life. You know, people do that and you put in your time. Whereas with web development and a lot of careers now is you jump around. So what do you do when you are no longer at that company and you don't really have a whole lot to show because most of your work was proprietary? You're not allowed to show it. So a couple things you can do here. First, I would immediately start getting on the horn and working on your web presence. So whether it's YouTube videos, blogs, TikToks, just like explaining what you're working on, sharing absolutely everything you know, going to meetups. You have to get, if you're going to be a freelancer, people have to know about you, right? And you either have to be the most smart person in the world that people come to you to fix like this one issue that you're the only person in the world that's good at, which is not that common, or you just have to be well known. When I was doing freelancing, I was posting lots of blog posts about the stuff I was working on. I was going to meetups and talking about it. That's how I got most of my work, because it is very hard to find a reliable freelancer. And I'm willing to bet you're in your early 50s, you have the skills that a lot of younger developers do not have in terms of time management and communication and all of that stuff. So you have a huge leg up there, and people love to work with people that are not flaky. It's so hard to find people that are not flaky to do stuff. So start doing that. Obviously, make a website. You can have a private portfolio as well, where you can talk about the stuff that you worked on. Just say, hey, contact me for a private portfolio. I did that as well. I'm not able to talk about the stuff publicly, but I'm able to maybe show you, get on a call. I can sort of talk about how that stuff works. So private portfolio, start getting some stuff out there, get some stuff up on GitHub. You just have to create a bit of a presence. And I think once you've done that, the leads will start to flow. People will tell their friends, tell everybody you meet, hey, I'm a web developer if you ever need anything. Because almost always it's, hey, I don't need anything, but my sister's husband's dog needs a website. And I'll pass the contact on.
Yeah. Speaking of dogs, I don't know if you can hear this noise. My dog has a cone on her head right now, and it's my sheepdog, and she does not like it. So she's just like rubbing it all over everything in my office right now. I'm going to have to put her in the house. The other day, was it just yesterday, before we started recording, with her cone, she unplugged my audio interface. I couldn't get audio, or no, it was my video. I couldn't get video because she walked underneath my desk and her cone caught on a cable. Dog cone.
Man, you need those like twist lock cables. You know, they use those in some industries. Is that a thing in audio world? It's gotta be.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, totally.
Yeah?
Yeah. And even XLR cables, which are like microphone cables, you know, they clip in. So, you know.
Oh, yeah. They have like a little, yeah, you're right, a little retainer clip.
Yeah, we need retainer clip USB-C is what we need.
I guarantee that works, and it's like $1,000 per cable.
Oh, no. Here it is, USB-C locking cable. It exists.
But how do you like, does the thing you're plugging it into also need to take it?
That's such a great question. I have so many questions about this cable. I've never seen anything like this. I have no idea what this connects to, if you have to have a special type of connector.
I've seen this with hose bibs, where there's this one company trying to like recreate the hose bib, and they have like this beautiful twist lock proprietary hose bib. And like, there's no chance I'm going to put that on my house, where like this one company owns hose bib, you know, your hose breaks and you have to like order a part from this one company that owns a patent to hose bib. I'm not having a proprietary hose bib. I got enough issues with my Apple stuff being proprietary.
Your hose bib. Next question is from Shivan. How do you deal with negative feedback? I'm fortunate enough to be working with an amazing and supportive development team. We always work hard as we can produce the best for our users, and we get great feedback from management and power users. However, when I talk to more peripheral users, they aren't very impressed. For example, we might get complaints about our login system despite the work that we put into our features. Keen to hear your thoughts and thanks in advance. Yeah, you know what? The hard part about feedback is that not everyone is great at giving feedback. And sometimes people are harsh with their feedback, or maybe the way they give their feedback is not helpful. Maybe it's like hurtful in like an ego type of way, but maybe it's just straight up not good feedback. Like you can't, non-actionable feedback, right? I've mentioned this on the show before, but I had a client one time tell me the interface feels cloudy and he needs it to feel sunny. And I said, what does that mean? That's the best he could do. And sometimes that's what you get. But in my mind, the feedback in general, you need to externalize like yourself as a developer, the things you're capable of from the product and the feedback it gets. We get a lot of feedback on syntax. I'll tell you that. And honestly, 99% of it is very good. But occasionally you'll get a comment, some feedback, and it's like, it's really, one, not helpful, or two, super rude, or, occasionally like personally attacking. And I know it's not the same as development, but it can feel like that. The same way you get your feedback in development. And the best thing, and something I really admire about US, is that when you get negative feedback on syntax, I'm more the person that's going to take it personally, and you're more the person who's going to look at it and say, there's some truth into this feedback. So I think what you need to do is always look for what that truth is in the feedback, and less of the individual attack or the individual, like the way that the feedback's presented, and take a step back and look for what that truth is.
Yes. You have to look at it and say, what are they trying to say here? Like they may have been a little aggressive with their feedback, and certainly I've done this as well. Like I'll give you an example is many times I've tweeted out my frustration with render, or I literally got on emailed the CEO of FreshBooks and it was just like, this app is getting shitty, and I gave him all my feedback, and I only do that because I care. I like this stuff. I like render a lot. I like FreshBooks, but there's things that annoy me about it, and I'm worried that it's not going to get better. And if I didn't care, I would just move to something else and stop using it. But I care enough that I want to see this product survive, or I want to see this going. So the best, when people give me feedback, when I give feedback to other people, they sort of just like peel it apart and say, like, what are you actually getting at? What's the actual issue here? And it could be that the issue is that person has a personality disorder, but it also could be that there's some truth to it. There's, maybe I do understand what your frustration is. So there's that. And then also like what do you do with that is if just talk to them straight up. And often you can really neutralize any aggression that has there. Often they can be a little bit frustrated with what's going on. And you say, hey, sorry about that. Love to hear a little bit more. What do you think? What do you think would be a better way? Follow it up with like a kind question, and you can get good feedback out of it, and you can also get some neutralization. Often the person will say, "I'm sorry, I came off so aggressively. I had X, Y, and Z was going on in my life right now."
That often happens because I think people look at a product or a business or anything as a soulless entity, and not the people who are working behind the scenes working on it. And if you can bring that humanity back to that conversation, like you said, I think people always dial it back. And that's something that, I've had to learn quite a bit over the course of my time here. That's owning a business and having customer feedback or whatever, or anything like that, YouTube comments. You always have to look at like how to communicate and how to truly get to the truth that they're trying to give you, but in a human way, so that you connect.
They can give another example is Marquez Brownlee, MKBHD. So right now he's under fire for, he launched like a wallpaper app that's $16 a month for access to these wallpapers. And he's
one
getting
of which is just solid orange.
roasted, absolutely roasted by everyone. And like, I sent out a tweet about it. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like 16, that's more than Netflix, for wallpapers. Yeah. And like he's obviously getting hammered with feedback right now. And it's because like a lot of the replies to mine were like, yeah, he's a scammer. He's dead to me. And it's like, no, like I say this because I love Marquez and I think that he understands this stuff better than this. I think I expect more out of him and I wish to see more out of him. And obviously he's taking that feedback being like, yeah, the people are mad, not because I'm just some huckster trying to make an app that has expensive in-app purchases, but people are mad because they trust me and they love my work and they don't want to see me go down that route.
Yeah. They're not mad. They're just disappointed. And I don't think...
Disappointed. It's even worse.
Yes, they don't understand how to express that disappointment. So they express it in a way that comes off as like, Petrarch,
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm disappointed in it too. I mean, the dude has such a good reputation, and I feel like at some point he probably should have thought, is this a good idea? And I saw the latest thing on that, Wes, to make this about tech stuff, is that all of the wallpapers are in a unsecured S3 bucket. So once you open the bucket, you can just download any of them.
There's just a JSON file, which people were like replying like, yeah, you can just download them now. I'm like, no, like he has all the right in the world to charge whatever he wants for these wallpapers.
Yeah.
But we are also able to criticize like that's too much. $16 a month for access to wallpapers is too much. And then also like the really scammy ads. Like I got an ad for bail bondsman, which I'm not in trouble with the law, but I was like the ads on it were awful. You had to sit through like these like really awful like game ads. It just felt icky, and we wanted better from him, right? And then also, he had a massive security hole of not securing anything down, so you could just look at the JSON file and download them all. So silly.
Yeah, it's silly. It's silly indeed. All right, well, let's get into sick picks and shameless plugs. My sick pick today is an open source project, and it's a self-hosting project. Now, there's a number of these. You use like MB, right, Wes, or do you use Plex? Which one do you do?
I use Jellyfin. I was on MB for many years.
Okay. Yeah.
By the way, I've been trying to email the like lead maintainer of Jellyfin and get him on because I'm so curious about that project, right? It's multi-platform, runs on TVs, runs on mobile apps. It's a huge JavaScript app, C# on the back end. But there's something weird about the developers who work on these like it's not illegal, but like people are obviously using it to stream downloaded shows, right? And no one will ever get back to me on that. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. Jellyfin, the reason I don't use Jellyfin is because they don't have a Samsung TV app, and I don't want to Chromecast everything. And you could there's an open source one, but you have to get a developer Samsung TV account.
App. They have one now.
They do?
Yeah, for the longest time I had to sideload it.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. But no, it's like I have Samsung Frame, and we just go to the Samsung store and install it.
Okay, I'd prefer to do that. But yeah, I run MB. But here's something I just discovered recently, and it's a really good piece of software. And they're coming out with a native iOS app. It's Audio Bookshelf. So I listen to a lot of audio books, and you know what? Audible, expensive. You don't own the stuff. I mean, you kind of own it, but you're tied to a subscription and stuff like that. Audio Bookshelf is basically MB for audiobooks. Now, you can do audiobooks in MB, or I believe you can even do them in Plex, but it's not necessarily made for it. It's not very good. And Audio Bookshelf is like really, really nice. It's an open source project, so expect bugs here and there and whatever. But I really, really have been enjoying this thing. I installed it on my Synology. I set my wife up with an account. She can have her own books and her own like collections and all this stuff. And overall, it works really well. And what's cool about it too is that the API is nice enough that there are several apps on the App Store consuming this API that also work with other things. So you could use, there's a couple apps. The one that I'm currently using is called Plappa, Plappa, but they are coming out with an official one. It's just under test flight right now, and I don't have access to it. So there will be an official app for this thing. It's been really nice, and I've been really enjoying using this. So Audio Bookshelf, check it out.
So Plappa is an audiobook player client for Jellyfin and Audio Bookshelf written in Swift. That's nice. Yeah, I've been wondering about this because like we do audiobooks and we rent them from our library, but the apps are just awful. And like
Libby.
They have to download. Yeah, Libby. And sometimes they expire and it's so annoying. Like trying to find one for your kid and then they finally find one and it's like, well, that one's taken out right now, or you had that one but it expired, and
yeah,
that's cool.
Yep. Yeah, check it out.
I'm a sick pick, the Syntax hats. So we just got 2 new hats added to the Syntax store. They're $20 each. I got the felt one right now, and then there's also a blue one with the Syntax logo. I don't have it in my office right now, but these are awesome, really high quality hats. We made them from scratch. I didn't make them myself, but like if you take a look at the inside of the hat, all the seam tape says Syntax. There's also a spelling mistake on the label. I don't know if you noticed that, Scott.
No, I didn't.
I'll leave it for you. You have to buy it if you want to see a spelling mistake. But I was just playing with it the other day. I was like, I made the tag. I designed the tag. I go, oh crap, I spelled that wrong.
Should have had Sentry on it.
Yeah, should have, or at least a spell check. But that's a really cool hat. Check it out. $20. Really nice hats. Syntax.fm. Click on the store or swag in the URL bar. You can pick one up yourself.
Sick. Cool. And I'm going to shamelessly plug Syntax on YouTube. So check us out at Syntax FM. All of these episodes and so much more are available on YouTube. CJ Reynolds just released an incredible video on create your own Next.js starter template. This thing is 2.5 hours long of some of the most in-depth content you're going to get. So, I think the biggest complaint a lot of people have with YouTube developer content is that it's done by non-practitioners and it's surface deep and they're just reading the docs or something. And this is not that. CJ does an incredible job getting super deep into these topics. So if you are the type of person who likes to get into the nitty-gritty of it all, check it out at Syntax FM on YouTube.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you later. Peace.